All right. Hello, everyone. Happy Thursday and welcome to our presentation for specialty contractors. My name is Amanda McKernan. I'll be really leading today's conversation and starting off with a brief walk through the tool. And then we have a very special guest, Eldon Parry, who is going to be taking us through his current processes with Apollo and walking us through a real life project in action. Let Eldon say hi when he gets a second. Eldon, can you still hear us okay?
I can hear you just perfect. Looking forward to showing you what I know.
Awesome. All right, so if everyone can see my screen okay, I'm going to get started first with just a little bit of, like I said, a brief overview of Touchplan. From there, we're going to turn it over to Eldon so he can share his screen, and he's going to be taking us through Touchplan in action and over the last 5 to 6 years since Apollo first rolled it out, just everything that they've learned and evolved over time. At the end, we'll leave plenty of time for questions. Please feel free during the webinar to write it in during the chat. And of course, this call is recorded, so we can send this out as well to others. When we jump into Touchplan, whether it's for a GC or a specialty contractor, we're never going to steer away from the 4 main concepts that every project team will be able to benefit from when they use Touchplan. First is the ease of use. Second is the planning and daily recovery you'll get from your analytics to your reporting. The collaborative aspect, we want everyone from the non-tech savvy users to people that are in tech every day to be able to come into Touchplan and be able to access what they need to as far as their tasks and reports go. So it's a real-time digital platform that has unlimited users and can be joining anytime during these meetings. Lastly is your project data and analytics. Like any good information that's being put in the system, we want to eliminate the time and the burden of your Excel files and trying to figure out manpower and crew sizes and resources. So everything in Touchplan has real-time reporting and analytics that at any given second you can export out and be able to read. As far as the 5 main concepts that Touchplan will dive into today and Eldon really will take you through, is first and foremost how some teams can use this as a pull planning view. Whether you're doing the sticky notes in the field right now and just looking to better collaborate in a digital view, you can start from the sticky note view, or you can jump right into your 6-week, 3-week look ahead. That's going to be a lot more of the longer Gantt style bars showing the actual durations and tasks that everyone needs to be doing that week. Third is going to be the commitment planning. This is going to be really important for driving a lot of the reports, and this is really going to come in handy when we're starting to track our things getting done on time, early, late, and giving reasons why if they are not getting done on time, what are the impacts we're constantly seeing and what are ways we can improve on. Lastly is just the constant learning and improving. So like the analytics, all these reports are going to be instant now, so you don't have to spend the time and the energy having to generate these in other platforms. First and foremost, when it comes to Touchplan, is going to be how easy it is to plan and manage your crew size. To the right-hand side, we'll be diving into this in a live view, but the biggest thing during your project setup is we want to make sure you're setting your project so you can have a clear understanding of your day-to-day plans, giving you swim lanes to break down the different areas and how hectic the project can be, and then give you an area where you can look out as far as you possibly want. Being able to sequence tasks, link them up, and make sure we're keeping everyone accountable with their different roles and responsibility. With this too, you're going to start to have insights that you are able to generate at any given time, while also seeing how are our promising and calculations coming about. As far as tracking these delays, these are some of the visuals that you'll be able to see. The green is going to be on time. Blue is finishing early, and then the red is going to be anything that's delayed or late. When you start marking these reports and saying are things on time, early, or late, you're going to start having different reports that you can start seeing planned versus actual, what's our quantity versus what we planned, and all these reports that will spit out into PPC, pie charts, and everything you can imagine. Second is just how easy it is to plan and tweak on the fly. The biggest thing is we know that your project's constantly changing and evolving every second of the day, and we want you to have a place where you can be putting this down any second. So when it comes to your digital planning, whether it's material tracking, identifying quantity, what's being done as far as production that day. The custom fields in Touchplan and just what you're putting on the tasks is really where we're going to be able to tweak this to your project specifically. Touchplan is fully real time. So as far as the minute you move a task and you go to update it, it's not only going to update in your plan, but it's also going to update on everyone else's devices. It's going to show in your analytics in the reports. And at any given time you move something that's not intended to be done when it said it was, that's where you'll have an immediate prompt for variance reasons, PPC tracking, the list goes on, and we want to give you those reports, as you can see to the right-hand side, in a very clear and concise way. Last couple of things before we jump into turning this over to Eldon is the third and first easy to manage in your daily scope of workforce. So we now have live crew size views where you can be managing throughout the day who's doing what. The different colors can represent what's being done that day, who's doing what. You'll have everything from a staffing profile so you can understand the labor needs and any spikes you see. And you'll have Gantt charts, weekly work plans, your actual finish dates to really break these down by specific roles or projects, or depending on how we break out your job, just making sure the minute you look into your plan, we can track labor for the next weeks to come to make sure we're not seeing any spikes that are not intended. For these dashboard views, we'll be jumping in today as far as like your quantity tracking goes. We want you to start being able to see plan versus actual, even when it comes to quantity. Did we intend to put 13 studs in that day and we only got to 2? Let's track those reasons why. Let's see who was on site, what changed so drastically from when we said that was going to happen, and be able to always look back at these reports to see why. And lastly is the ease of use to collaborate. As I mentioned before, we want every single person in your project team to be able to come in here, access the tool, see their information, and move their information around if they have the access to do so. There's 2 levels in access: the admins, which would be able to drive the entire project, move anything around, and then you have your non-admins. This is if we want to give very limited access to a specific person that's logging in, where they can just move their color around and access their reports. At the end of the day, though, we want to keep it as collaborative as possible. Use this to facilitate those conversations that are having in the field, so you have unlimited users when it comes to Touchplan. And these different views in the field are all different scenarios that you could be running into when you're having these meetings. Eldon will speak to this more, but the goal is we're still getting everyone in the room, having these conversations, looking at the weeks to come, who needs what, making sure we're not going to run into any issues along the way, and leave with an actionable plan to be put in place to start off that week. If this person in the right-hand side was to move their task, again, it's going to move real time on everyone else's devices. So even if you can't necessarily make a meeting, you can still call in and be a part of those conversations since everyone else will see those reflected across the board. The mobile app is a newer feature we've released. Again, for some of the non-tech savvy users your project team will always inevitably face, this has been a great way to access that information and at least see their to-do list, but also most importantly, with how hectic the plans can get and how much activities you may be adding, we wanted to give a nice to-do list for those different trades and those different roles. So if you pull up the mobile app, you'll be able just to see what you're intended to do that day or that week and be able to still mark on time, early or late in the mobile app. So Touchplan is constantly evolving, constantly releasing new features. This has been one that's been very helpful for a lot of these teams to get into the tool and using it. And of course, with everything you're about to see today, Eldon's team has experienced it firsthand as well. We have a full customer success team that will be here to help you along the way. When Eldon and I first met 5 years ago at a conference and we were trying to game plan how we're going to roll this out to Apollo, a lot of that came from one feature function feedback to what they need to be successful, down to having these different customer success representatives work with Eldon and other point of contacts from his project team to get them to be from one project now to an enterprise customer. So we want this to be a full partnership. This isn't just a technology that we'll throw at you and say, go have fun with. We're fully here to grow a relationship with your company and make sure that you are seeing ROI and getting the best functionality you can out of it. With that being said, we're about to see Touchplan in action. I'll turn it over to Eldon now. Before I give him screen access, I wanted to start off with just kind of his proper focus when he's about to kick off the job of how he's really handling Apollo's to-do list and productivity. So Eldon, with that being said, I will turn it over to you. We are having a little bit of mic issues, so Eldon's calling in from the phone, so please let us know if you have any trouble hearing us, and we can try something different.
Going old school. Yeah, I mean, I always like to show this graph because I think anybody in construction probably relates with what the graph is trying to present. This is not me making up these numbers. We're a member of the Mechanical Contractors Association of America, NCAA, and they've done market studies. I think this report came out several years ago now of the common non-productive and productive items. Well, they don't list out productive, but all the non-productive items that typically impede construction from gaining the optimal efficiency that we hope to achieve. So I believe any tool, system, software, or process that we look to implement in construction should evolve around reducing the non-productive side of the graph. And I would imagine we all echo the same. If I am to share my screen, am I a presenter as of yet, Amanda? There you go.
Yes, I think it's presenter access. Yeah.
See what screen is. Okay, so you can see Touchplan. I can't tell which screen is showing.
It's showing the Intel base build, your tab JB1013.
Okay, perfect. The main monitor then. Okay, so I got a couple different examples I'm going to show of how we use Touchplan. By no means am I saying these are the ways it should be used, nor am I saying we're the most awesome thing on earth. I'm more just showing you raw data. As you can see, this plan's an actual active plan, as you can tell by the active line that's streaming down the center of my screen, or right center of my screen. And so to kind of highlight some of these items, I mean, I can just zoom in here. I can change the font size real quick for some of these. So you can kind of read some of the different activities. This is a fairly basic plan as far as we're not using a lot of bells and whistles that Touchplan has. It's, I would imagine, looking at this job number, this is actually created by a field foreman and a field general foreman to get information in there. So certain things, if you were to look in here, like some of the roles are actually going to be called out by grouping. You know, sometimes by people, detailers, fabrication aspects, whether it's a fitter, or a plumber, or a sheet metal, instrumentation and controls, you know, subcontractor. That's what these different colors are going to represent, so they can then run reports based on how they want to see that. Up top, you can kind of see the live crew size indicator, right? If I wanted to filter this down, I could look at just what I wanted to see for the subcontractors based on what they have in there, or I should say our subcontractors. I should say Apollo Mechanical is a specialty trade contractor, and that we perform sheet metal piping and plumbing scopes. So in this case, this would be insulators that I'm showing. Another option, this has got a little bit more detail, depending again on the job and the client and the need and the execution. So these different colors here represent different systems, and the location tag, if you guys aren't that familiar, so you have an opportunity to select a role and a location and obviously a description. A description shows up in the main body of the ticket. Location can literally mean location. I can talk through how we kind of use it somewhat differently at times. If I was to explain Apollo's view of this, roles and locations are really your filter abilities. So depending on how you want to filter a report to procure information out of Touchplan for a specific job, you can use these two, regardless of the fact that they're called role and location. You can put information in there as you see fit to allow for filtering to occur. This specific job, we're using them to their literal sense. So this orange is a stainless exhaust system. I can tell from the purple tag if I was coming to locations. These are different locations within the building. Obviously, over time, we just know the color code, so I know that purple is in the basement. I know that green is our offsite fabrication warehouse, if you would, or more of an assembly warehouse. Blue is our galvanized duct installation. You know, and so on and so forth. And I have some items way out here. Red is client milestone items. I don't know if I remember. Oh, yeah, that's right. The light brown is our basically volatile organic exhaust type work. pretty basic. You can see it is manpower loaded. It kind of shows that two guys are kind of operating each one of these different these items. This is kind of a sequential pattern that we use. So, I mean, in this case, these same two guys are performing this function throughout. That's kind of how we operate this. To get a little, to show you a very different style, that's kind of I don't want to call it an in-house adoption of me, but what you're looking at here, if I zoom out a little bit, it's a little more complex piece of a scope, and I'm actually going to yellow. So the way this planning process works, you can see we got the two trades that are broken out in here. I have process piping and mechanical sheet metal for this specific job. And the color of the tickets, the rolls in this case, if I was to pull this up so you can see, we really run three different main roles in this category. Green is ready, right? So, I mean, it's elementary level here. Green light's ready to go. Red lights, don't think about it. Yellow, maybe, depending on what we feel. So that's kind of how we run the roles here. We can run reports. So on this job, there's a lot of volatility due to supply chain and a myriad of other things that can impede progress. So to try to impede us from having guys in areas where there's not executable work and therefore inefficient execution of time and cost, we run what we call, I mean, it's a make-ready report, but it's not quite directly the lean make-ready report, right? It's a list of all the tasks that can be executed if we put bodies in those areas. Red is simply something the team knows has executable items that need to be completed before it can become ready to apply manpower. There's no yellow tickets on this one, but yellow tickets would indicate that if we got desperate and instead of laying off folks, there are yellow activities we could put them on, although it wouldn't be the most efficient use of time. Additionally, the locations here we use for specialties. If I'm to get into specifics like orbital welding, and maybe certified needs, like if you had an IR fusion welder as well would be on here. Sometimes we put, you can see we got analytical activities that have to occur by third parties, so we can sort for those. We can run reports for any of our testing activities via the location. If we had a respirator need or a breathing air need, where they're specifically trained and qualified individuals needed, we use the location tag on jobs like this in order to run reports for the entire project to figure out where those specialties are being double booked or not fully utilized. So that's an example. The other difference in this plan that is something new to how we start operating in some jobs is instead of doing by crew size, these numbers up top represent hours. So if I was to come into a ticket, that's not a crew size of 10, that's a 10-hour activity that we expect it to take. And so we can then look at our crew plan size up top and kind of figure out where things spike and come down from an hours perspective. We've found on some jobs and with some field teams, they think better in an hour perspective than in a 0.25 of a guy perspective. And so that's an example of how we would use, and again, we kick out like Gantt. You can kick out a Gantt report that'll show you total hours for a week for a given crew or for a given plan. If I was just to come in here and run a report here real quick on a Gantt, you can select the plan you want to see. So if I wanted to see the specific plan, I could pull this up. Or if I had a batch of plans, so we name our plans in a naming convention. So in this case, this indicator here would kind of tell us what it is and where it is based on scope and project information. The next set of information is project information. Charge code, for example, is in there. Our job numbers also give us indications of location of the project, where it may exist. And obviously the individual, this would be the general foreman who's in charge. So I could run a report across this for everything that's in Rory's category and select all the ones I want, run a report, see his specialty needs based on how we have the roles and locations broken out. Any questions, please just feel free to shoot. Another go ahead.
There was a question on the hours you just showed. Someone asked, what was the learning curve of having the team understand that's not going to be a minimum day duration versus hours now when you were communicating that to the project team?
Honestly, the project team was the one that suggested it. We had a lot of foremen, if I'm being specific, that were struggling with breaking, because some of these activities are not full day activities. Some activities are 1 or 2 hour activities. And if I'm not going to get myself slapped here, Touchplan is not very good for hourly breakdowns. And so honestly, a lot of crew members were getting kind of stuck in their head of, well, how do I associate 0.25? I'm going to have 2 guys on it for 2 hours in the morning, but I need to get it done this day, and there's going to be a list of activities. It was our field craft that requested, hey, can we just input the amount of hours we expect it to take on a given task? They still look at a duration, so they will still, to maybe answer the back half of that question, see if I can find one on here that's done right. And our foreman and general foreman do often fill these out, so I can't promise it's always 100%. So this would be a 20-hour task, right, that he broke up into two 10-hour days. So that's kind of how we handle the duration. They still look at things in a duration perspective of how many days do they think it's going to take, and then they couple that with how many hours they expect to allocate to that duration, and then we just do the math to spread it, right? So if it's 20 hours and over 2 days, and we put 10 hours on the crew side, so we know it's 10 hours a day. Hopefully that answers the question. I mean, I would say the learning curve depends on the job and how the team executes that job, right? I would say this is somewhat of a project-specific reallocation. We don't do this holistically across the company, although we have had some projects and service teams, for example, start to mimic what we're doing here because it's a little easier sometimes to understand workload when you have teams that are bouncing around. Because some of these projects, as you can see, they really only, like this next week, you know, we're not here yet, so we'll see where this fills in by the time we get to March. But if this was real, they really only have work Monday and Wednesday, minimal items that probably just the foreman is executing on some of these other days. There is Saturday work on this job, so that's not a mistake. Hopefully that answers your question. If it doesn't, please let me know how I can attempt to answer it further.
They wrote back and said thank you very much. And then there's a couple of coming through that we can wait till the end. If I see anything specific to the phase plans you're in, I'll cut you off. But for now, we have a couple more that we can answer right at the end. So please feel free to keep writing those in.
Okay. This is more just an example of this would be more like a service. So this project or specific aspect of a project is kind of like an on-site service team / almost emergency crew. You know, they kind of just answer when the bell is rung. And so you can see they actually run swim lanes by team, if you would. And we got the leadership team name in there. And you can see there's a couple down here that do some of our demolition respirator stuff. And then we just try to map this in. This has actually been a very, very functional methodology we've gone into. We've actually started, as you can see, this is a little older one. I didn't want to be in a live plan. We used to do, depending on the breadth, so some of these can get pretty large. These crews are running about 35 to 40 fitters on this type of work. And as you can see, the tickets get kind of all over the place. And to some degree, Touchplan starts to struggle when you have this many tickets in a given window like we have. And so we've started breaking these into separate plans. So Israel will have his own plan, John would have his own plan, and Kyle would have his own plan. Instead of doing the swim lanes, we found that to be a little cleaner from an operation standpoint. You do lose a little you have to pay attention to how you do your roles and locations if you're wanting to do a report that covers all three of them. But I mean, essentially, one of the things that's been very useful here is in a lot of our, we'll call it coordination meetings and planning meetings with clients to go over scopes of work, especially in and I got to throw in the emergency / service, not straight service. It is kind of an emergency service atmosphere where there are new scopes of work that pop up on a given week, given day, sometimes even given hour. And a lot of questions are, where can we fit this in and what does it affect? And so that's what's kind of led to us putting all of those activities on a given plan. So if, you know, somebody was asking me, hey, we want to work on, I don't know, they want to pull this task into here, something like this, we can quickly talk through, okay, well, if you wanted to do that, that's going to push this AVX 462 activities we had planned. We can do that, and we can start talking with the client on exactly how to execute that. And that's where often this gets used, is in that type of atmosphere, because it does change a lot. You can see if we get in here, so to kind of show how we kind of break this down, in our commercial jobs do something similar to this on like a high-rise hotel or some type of build out, where they'll actually put the overall duration that's provided from the general contractor from the schedule. So you can see this is a, roughly a 12-day duration. And then we have all of our activities broken out underneath, so we can talk through a micro schedule of exactly what we have to do in the exact sequence we're looking to do it in. And then they plop these milestones in here. These gray ones are little buy-offs that we're responsible for. And that's kind of how the guys will run these instead of having individual plans. Because these crews can get shared, and these are very volatile scopes of work. We could get to Wednesday and things could push, and they could want to pull everything from this activity up and in because something arrived that wasn't supposed to arrive in natural construction atmosphere. Those are some of, I'll say, the three major ways that we use these. There's some other, we use these for some odd things too. I mean, guys keep vacation calendars on here. So we have general foremen when they're running, when we're running crews of 75 to 100 people and you got 2 or 3 GFs managing that group, we have some plans that are just time off calendars where guys put all the time off from all their different crews so they can see where guys are going to be out. What questions do we have? Maybe we can, I don't know where we're at on time.
I can
talk forever.
We have 4 questions as of now, so I'll read them off. And for those of you that haven't asked anything yet, please feel free to keep putting them in the chat and we will fire away. Someone asked, typically, how long did it take to learn Touchplan for your company?
Good question. It's somewhat, so I can answer for regions. I'll try to give a multi-pronged answer. I'll give a specific project answer, a region answer, and then an enterprise answer. So I imagine most people on here are from construction companies. My first statement there is I believe we're all mostly companies within a company, right? So different divisions, regions kind of operate as their own entity with an overarching umbrella called Apollo Mechanical or insert company here. So we initially adopted this on a project that was having some pretty challenging requirements around planning and the actual execution of the work. And so it started with actually this team that I'm showing you here. This was a team they were trying a myriad of different ways to try to keep track of this very volatile scope, anywhere between, software note programs to Outlook calendars to, your standard notebook and different colored pens. And so it started with that simple team. I can tell you that team, and I will say they were a little bit more advanced on the technology side of things and a little more forward thinking. They adopted Touchplan on that specific team within weeks. I remember I originally started a pilot and I told Amanda, hey, I just want one project. I'm going to give this to this team for 3 or 4 weeks. If they tell me it sucks, then I won't talk to you again. If it works okay, we'll talk about what we can do more. And within a couple of weeks, the general foreman for this specific work, he says, if you take this away from me, I think I might quit because I can't go back. Cliche, I know, I'm not really trying to sell you, but that's a very honest conversation that we had with the individual. He still works for us. From there, right, I almost say it's word of mouth growth. So the project that he was on, or obviously everybody has their group that they run with, especially when you get into the trades world. He started talking to some of his coworkers that are also general foremen and superintendents and started showing them, hey, this actually works really well for keeping track of crews and figuring out where all your detailers are and where all your welding pinch points are and keeping track of fabrication and how that fits in and keeping crews aligned with fabrication arrivals and so on and so forth. And it just started growing really quick on that project. I would say that took probably only took us 6 months to fully adopt into that project. Where by about the 6-month period, everybody was pretty much operating in Touchplan. From a leadership perspective, I would say it took us about a full year to get our foreman on board. And to give you a breadth of scope of what I'm talking about, because that may sound outrageous to some degree, but this specific job that started this, there's about 52 foremen on the project, right? And we were running about 270 fitters and about 100 sheet metal folks. So it took about a year, maybe a year plus, to get all of those foremen kind of operating in some format on Touchplan. Didn't take much of the twisting of the arm, honestly. They more wanted to learn the technology gap that they had so they could utilize the software. From there, I would say, so we probably started using Touchplan. So then you get into that region. This originally started in our Northwest region, specifically our Oregon region. We're based on, I don't know, probably 8 or 9 states from an enterprise corporate perspective. So Oregon was kind of the initial adopter. I would say within that year, that same year, we probably had 50% of our commercial jobs also starting to utilize Touchplan. It had spread through some of our leadership meetings, both field and office. So I'd say about a year for that region. And I would say by year 2, by the end of year 2, we had almost our entire Northwest division using Touchplan. Again, in some aspects in a very rudimentary level and some at a very complex integration level. And I would say from an enterprise perspective at this point, Touchplan's pretty much used on every job throughout Apollo where it sits. And I would say we're probably in year 5 or 6. I don't know, we might be further than that. It's 2016, 7 years, so we're 7 years. I'd say it probably took about 5 years to kind of become what I'll call a corporate standard. We actually even have APIs now that pull exports and import into our project management systems. And so that's how I'd answer that question. Hopefully I did okay at that.
Love it. The next question is, there's a lot of great, in all caps, great info here. How do you hold different folks accountable for adding their own sticky notes so it doesn't fall on the internal team?
Yeah, no, good question. You know, and the first half of that answer, I'll say that's still something we actively manage, right? And I suppose I can even say that we can struggle with depending on the team. The newer the team, obviously, the more burden that exists on the internal team to ensure that that occurs. Honestly, I think it's mostly, most of our success has been around solving an existing problem for the field and seeing that they actually get some recognition based on the information they can share, which is probably a crappy answer, but it's the reality of kind of how we've seen the adoption take hold. There's a lot of foremen, even down to the journeyman level, right, can be frustrated at times because they feel like they echo something or they provide input to how to execute something, and it falls on deaf ears. And reality is it really gets lost in translation from whoever it went to then whoever finally typed it into wherever the software was and needed to type it into, and it doesn't match what they originally had said. And so because Touchplan is kind of a collaborative and all people can be in there, it allowed those people to input their information directly and not have to go through a translation or hope it got in there 4 days later after they already finished the work and nothing changed. And I think that's really what started solving it. To boot, for our general foreman and superintendents, honestly, it was actually pretty easy because they started seeing the hours they saved versus Excel spreadsheets and Outlook calendars and manually transposing information to a client for a given, planning meeting or execution meeting. They went from spending, I'm not going to put numbers out there, but they went from spending, more time to less time on the data manipulation and transfer aspect of things, and therefore could spend more time actually game planning with their crews on how to keep guys efficient. And so we actually started having people ask us. I mean, if I was to sell why I still believe in Touchplan, is we still get field folks that ask for access to Touchplan to enter information on their own. This plan I'm showing you on my screen currently is not managed by an office member at all. It's the general foreman and the foreman for this scope of work. Now, we do enable them, right? They have computers, we give them devices, we help them get connectivity. We do perform some of the infrastructure necessities to facilitate that, but it's really the time savings and their ability to look good. When they start succeeding and projects start getting executed based on how they said it was going to happen, and they find wins from that, and I've had some foremen who enjoy it just so they can tell the PE to shut up and stop calling them, right? I kid you not, I've heard the conversations on speakerphone where the foreman is like, "It's in Touchplan, isn't it? Why are you calling me?" And that's kind of, so I'd say to some degree we've kind of built a culture, and that is 6-7 years in the making. If I'm to simplify the answer, it solves problems and allowed them to do what they do best, which is work, and cleared hurdles for them, and therefore they've adopted it with some pressure. And our comments are always, hey, if I'm being honest, my salesmanship when I'm talking to a foreman or a superintendent, and whether it's good or bad, I can't tell you, but I tell them, look, you can either find a way to put the information in if you want to see it, or you can let an office guy pretend he knows how to do it. And most of them understand that, and they go, yeah, I'll get it in. So hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, and there was actually one off of that asking about statusing. They noticed some plans seem to have statusing, some don't. Do you have a standard at Apollo?
Yeah, the honest answer, no. That's the honest answer. we still struggle with statusing. It takes a pretty good, you'll see this job's a little better at it. Oops, trying to get my screen to work again. You can see for the most part, I don't have too many things in the past here that are unstatused. I'm really just in this given week. And we do kind of look at things in a week period. I always tell my guys in the field, look, I don't care about the day. Like, we care about the week. So whether this activity really happens on Monday or gets done on Friday, if you got it done that week and that was your goal, then that's success. And so our status meetings, we do hold, and it depends on the job. Okay, this is where our no, we don't have a holistic corporate standard, partially because every job's executed very differently, and it's hard to hold a standard from one job. You know, if I'm doing a high school build out versus a high tech semiconductor facility, those execution strategies are going to be very different. So I can't necessarily take the principles from each of those and apply them to each other and force people to follow a single standard, or at least I haven't found a great way to do that. Neither have we. So as a company, so we more have project specific status update plans. I can tell you this project, the reason if I went into almost any project in here, or sorry, any plan in this project, you'd see pretty well status, because they hold a status meeting internally with the foreman every week, with the foreman and the general foreman. And honestly, I do hold, I'm just going to tell you my strategy. Again, I'm by no means trying to tell you that I know best and that this is what everybody should do. I'm just explaining what we do. My strategy is I hold the office responsible for ensuring that data collection points are executed, and I hold the field responsible for ensuring the information about installation is executed. So frankly, if I find things not status here, I don't go to the foreman and general foreman. I go to my project engineering or my project management staff, and I say, hey, what's going on here? Why don't we have status updates? Why isn't this pinned? Why aren't the variance reasons explained? We do have some general foremen who enjoy that information, but that's a person-to-person thing. So that would be my answer. No, we don't have a great standard. We kind of look at it as a project-specific execution style, and I do hold the project management team more accountable for the status aspect of things, and I hold the field more responsible for the information within the tickets and the organization of them, if you would, the execution strategy.
Love it.
Hopefully that answers the question.
We have two more after this, so feel free for the remainder to ask anything else. Someone wants to know if, did you ever use this for pole planning, or did you start to put them on work days from the start?
Most of the jobs I've managed look like what you see. It's mostly just looking at work days. We do go into pole plans with this information, and then we move them around. I am not the greatest at the, I don't even know where it is here, on the active line over here, where you put all the activities over on the right-hand side and you pull them to the left. So sadly, I can't really give you a lot of feedback on that, because we mostly operate in this format. We do go into a standard pole plan, right? If our general contractors have pole plans, we take this in there, and we'll often engage in a pole plan and we'll move our items around, but we more look in a holistic start to finish view and move things around and try to see how it starts sitting in there, right? More like this. You can see these are milestones up top from our pole plan, these purple and orange tags. And all these tickets have to be done before certain milestones, obviously, like most construction jobs. And so in a pole plan, we help move things around and then talk through what it's going to take for us in order to do that. If they want an oil-free air system done within the first 10 days of the project, and we'll talk through, okay, well, then that means my process cooling water systems and my equipment vacuum systems are going to have to be pushed out a little bit later, because those have a little bit more of a prefabrication requirement. And we can talk through the pole plan with the general contractor. But no, we don't do your stereotypical pole plan where we put all the activities out here and then pull them over. And I can't say it does, because it doesn't work. We just haven't graduated to that intelligence.
Perfect. And the last question is for a newer company, so they appreciate your feedback on how you rolled out Touchplan, but they want to know what's the simplest way you recommend for the field teams to use Touchplan for the first couple of months to get started. $1 million question, right?
Well, I'm just going to presume that there's enough support staff on the project management team to help. So the way I would probably start, especially if you have field craft that are not overly exposed to technology, right? If they're not really computer literate, which I will agree we've had, before we adopted Touchplan, if I'm going to take a slight rabbit hole here, before we adopted Touchplan, we had implemented computers in the previous years to our foremen. And so they did have some pre-training on how to use a computer. So assuming that if I'm going to a normal construction job where, they're not necessarily super computer savvy, or that is changing year by year. We're getting more and more competent people in the field that understand both computers and how to execute a job and get stuff installed. I would probably suggest that they write down what they want and have a PE or a project manager or an admin or whatever your role is called on the project management team, input those into Touchplan and kind of show them, okay, look, here's everything you wrote down. Here's how I enter it in, and slowly start exposing that, because it's really easy, to add a ticket. You just type it in, and sometimes, as you saw on this plan, right, that's why this is this way, right? The field team is, I don't know where all my information just went. The field team is a little less savvy on computers, and so all they ask is, hey, just fill out the application, just fill out the description. Just tell me what your task is. And we have started with teams that just look, if you're used to pen and paper, write it on a pen and paper. Tell me what the activities are. I will go put it in Touchplan, and I will show you how that's done, and I'll spend a little time showing it to you. And generally, after you do that the first couple times, you ask them, hey, do you think that's something you feel comfortable with? Right? All you do is click and add a ticket and just type this in. I can go fill in some of the rest. And as they get into it, they'll realize it's not as complex as they think, and then they can start using some of these other items and features. That's probably the best answer I can think of.
Yeah, no, I think you answered that perfectly. And I think the biggest thing too for newer companies or just project teams on this call, definitely leverage our customer success team. Their main job is making sure you feel comfortable navigating through the tool. We have some set trainings to kick off your projects to navigate through and learn all the clicks and the buttons that Eldon made look very easy today on. So that is all the questions we have. We can give everyone about 10 minutes back to their day. Eldon, anything you want to leave the group with as far as any last Touchplan information or just as a company as a whole before we wrap up?
The only thing I would echo, and again, this is opinion of me. I don't want to say I've fought, but I've been hesitant to create too many standards between jobs. And I think us as Apollo, we've still been trying to figure out how to do that, because unfortunately, my catchphrase is standardization is for the whole, not the individual. And if you're looking at it from project to project, I think it's kind of the same. We've had some movement where guys want to force everybody to plan a specific way, but that's not how a field guy's brain works. And therefore, it ends up being an office plan and not a field plan. And I always feel that really Touchplan's true leverage is getting the field input directly into the plan. And the more they feel it's theirs, the more input you get from them. Even if Touchplan doesn't work systematically great from a software perspective, just getting that input and that buy-in from the field into the plan, I feel it benefit. I don't want to say enough, but a good benefit. So I'd be a little careful on trying to standardize too quickly, especially between projects. I think standardizing on a project is absolutely great. Standardizing corporately, I think, takes a little bit more discussion and strategy.
Yeah, I love that, and I can definitely echo that too. Well, Eldon, we really appreciate you. Thank you again. I know we go way back, so appreciate you taking the time during your busy day to walk everyone through your processes. We'll be recording this, as we mentioned at the beginning, so happy to send it out. We'll be marketing it on our LinkedIn page, and if anyone didn't get any questions in today that you were hoping to ask, please don't hesitate to reach out to Eldon or myself, and we will get those answered. But I hope everyone has a great rest of your week, and thank you again for your time today. Thank you, Eldon, so much. I really appreciate it.